I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is Future Signal. On this episode, I am joined by none other than Jon Grinnell. Now, Jon Grinnell is OG for this podcast. Before this podcast was rebranded to Future Signal, it was called More Than Blockchain, and Jon actually, I think you came on when it was even called Wi-Fi and Water, which is crazy, which is it was. So this podcast has gone through many different changes. Now we're here at Future Signal. I do not see that changing just because it's working well. But Jon is OG. He's one of the first people I've ever had on in my podcasting journey to talk about crypto, to talk about Bitcoin, to talk about Ethereum and NFTs. And I was just looking it up. He came on May 11th, 2021. So anyways, long preamble here. Jon, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Jarrett. Thank you so much for bringing me back. I'm thrilled. I'm honored. I love to talk anything crypto, and especially to do with smart people like you that are putting on cool stuff and broadcasting that out to the world. So yeah, man, thanks for having me.
No, I can't thank you enough. You are one of the few people who I know who was in Bitcoin probably before 2015. And I think that number is, the amount of people that were in Bitcoin or crypto or who kind of knew about it and were hanging out with it and talking about it before 2015 is probably, I would venture to say, maybe 10 million people on the planet. It is a very, 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 very small number. So for me, it is a huge honor to have you back. I have some notes here, but I'm just kind of hoping we can jam. In between the time when you were last on and now, you worked at Coinbase. I don't know if you can talk about that. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I feel like I want to give you the moment to either say, hey, I don't want to talk about that, or say, yeah, this is what I was doing at Coinbase. This is what that experience meant to me. This is maybe what, if someone's listening who uses Coinbase and doesn't know, this is something that Coinbase does or something. So please, if you want to talk about Coinbase, I would love to hear about your time there.
For sure. So I had the privilege and the honor of working at Coinbase for about 3.5 years or so. And if I could kind of sum that up, it's probably, I would say, like, what a journey, number one. And then for those who are perhaps more or less or maybe not familiar with Coinbase, Coinbase is probably one of the world's most well-known cryptocurrency exchanges. So if you are curious on purchasing Bitcoin, if you're curious on investing, where do you go? Odds are you probably have heard of or could go to Coinbase and buy some crypto. That was certainly my story, certainly the story of everyone I orange pilled in my entire family to start investing. And to your question around what I was doing at Coinbase, my original profession is in learning and development. And so I was actually brought on to help implement a learning management system and do some internal learning and development for the entire company, for the employee base. And I kind of arbitraged that position into what I really did there for probably the kind of the second half of my tenure was I worked on Crypto University. And so this was an internal program that Brian Armstrong put out, and really the bottom line was getting people on chain and crypto forward and through education. So I was out there in the trenches with employees, dog fooding, getting them on chain, helping them understand how to invest, how to use crypto apps, how to explore on chain aside from just investing. So a lot of education. And during that time, kind of in tandem at Coinbase, while I was working there, just the way that the kind of, I would call them headwinds on the entire crypto industry were coming at the, entire on-chain kind of economy. It was just insane, right? Like the SEC was coming down. You saw so many lawsuits. You saw so many things with the regulation. You saw the fall of FTX, this huge crypto exchange, which we can talk about. But there was just so much, I would say, like scar tissue and just really pretty intense things that happened during my tenure there at Coinbase. And honestly, working there, it was like having a front row seat to all of it. And so that's just a little bit about me, a little bit about Coinbase, and happy to kind of double click on any parts.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're open to talking a little bit, broad brushstrokes about your experience at Coinbase, because I did know that you were doing a lot of learning and a lot of internal work with employees. And one of the things that you had said, and which I now know to be true from my lived experience, is that many people who work in crypto or work in Bitcoin, they may not actually own any crypto, own any Bitcoin. The companies are so big that, for example, people in HR may have nothing to do with crypto,
Right.
because they're just really good with managing people. People who even do marketing, they could be really good at taking a narrative, creating a message, and getting it out there. They may have nothing to do with crypto. And the other thing, and I believe that when you and I spoke about your time at Coinbase, this was years ago when you were actually there, you were like, yeah, 50% of the people who join the team, who are young grads out of Stanford or whatever, they have no idea, but maybe they're really good at doing analytics or something, or they're really good at Google AdWords, all things. And so I guess I wanted to ask, from your time, like with the work that you did, how many people by a percent when you started, what was the employee base that understood crypto? Let's give an example of 30%. And then when you left, what did you feel like it was, and how much of that do you feel like you were able to influence?
Great question. We did a little study on this. We did a little analysis. We did
Okay.
a segmentation analysis to find out what percent of the company roughly was crypto forward. And we found it actually really kind of was reflective of what you see even broadly in a sample size of your friends or a sample size of people you know. Maybe for every 10 people that you know, about one or two of them understand the technology. Is that kind of what you would say in your case too?
I mean, you've said 10% or 20%, and that is
Yeah.
way higher. If you're using the words that you just used, understand the technology.
Yeah.
I think now, if I were gonna say this to you, and I'm like, okay, when I got into crypto in 2017, how many of my friends and family knew about crypto? Roughly zero,
Yeah.
approaching zero. How many people from my friends and family know about crypto now or Bitcoin? I would say all of them know about it,
Yeah.
and then to varying degrees. Like, do they understand the tech? Probably not. There are
Yeah.
things that there's new things that come out all the time on the Ethereum blockchain I hear about as I'm much more into Bitcoin now, that I'm just like, dude, that sounds super cool. I would need to read, So
Yeah.
I would say zero to now today, asking me today, 50 to 60% definitely know about it. But I would say somewhere between 3 to 5% probably own.
Yeah.
But then understand the tech, we're still around 1%.
Yeah. And it's so early days. And I think at least at Coinbase, to kind of answer your original question, we found that about 20% of people were what we would call crypto forward. And by that sense, we meant, I mean, there's so many different ways to define that, right? And the way that we kind of looked at it and spliced it up was, are you familiar with the technology? Are you familiar with the concepts? Do you understand how to advocate for it? Can you explain it? If you're at a barbecue on the 4th of July with your family, are you able to, what I said earlier, orange pill someone? In other words, are you able to persuade them to understand the impact and the value of the technology? And that's really still hard to do. And the other dimension that we looked at was, are they actually using it outside of investing? That was the name of the game at Coinbase. Probably the top priority was actually getting on chain. And the hypothesis is that that on-chain economy, the people who are actually using it not just for investing, but using it in the sense of, this is a new internet architecture and a new technology that's going to power, quote, Web3, right? Where you can read, write, own. And just basically the ability to transfer value over the internet. That was the key action that we had employees take there. And even still to this day, in companies I talk to and places I go and people I talk to and things I see, it's still very, very early days in terms of that Web3 kind of on-chain utility phase, but it's getting better. And yeah, that was really kind of the axe to grind, I would say, and still is.
Yeah. How many people work at Coinbase now? And we will eventually get away from Coinbase.
Yeah, yeah,
We haven't spoken about this, to be honest.
yeah. Great, good point. I think about around 3,500 employees is what they posted publicly in their earnings call most recently.
Okay, cool. Coinbase. I'm just glad that we talked about that because you've worked at one of, as you said, probably the most well known. I mean, I think Coinbase and Binance are the two that most people have probably heard of. If you walk around the street, like if you're in your New York Times, sorry, if you're in New York, what's the word? Times Square in New York, and you're just doing street interviews, I think people would say, "Oh yeah, Binance or Coinbase." That's how maybe I would get to crypto. Have you been following just in general any of the regulations, the regulatory conversations that have been happening? Because I do feel like stuff has been dropped, definitely against XRP, and stuff has been, I believe, dropped against Coinbase. Have you been following that? Because it sounds like you were listening to the earnings call, as you are likely someone who holds coin. Have you been following any of that?
I have been following it on a high level basis, just observing the trends, right? Not going too deep, but what you see is what you said, right? You see all these cases being dropped. OpenSea had allegations from the SEC previously that they were selling unregistered securities that just got dropped. Uniswap got a Wells notice from the SEC that was dropped. I believe Robinhood had another regulatory crackdown that was dropped. And so it's promising, right? Because you're seeing these regimes, these three-letter agencies back off a little bit and saying, it seems like they're saying, let's get things back onshore built in America. And I think that's broadly a very promising sign that there's going to be continued efforts to have sensible regulations so that companies and individuals and teams and enterprises understand what the rules on the field are. Because previously, I know that was a huge thing in all of my professional work in crypto is no one knew what the rules were. No one knew how to play by the rules. Even if they went to the SEC wouldn't even explain how to register. So it's all a positive sign, and that's kind of how I'm taking it right now. You want less enforcement, right? You want more free market and more innovation to kind of accelerate because it's still such a young industry and it's very promising. So I love to see it. I got to admit, I love to see it.
Yeah, we were talking at work the other day internally about messaging and just in general. You forever when it came to crypto or Bitcoin, and I'm in Bitcoin mining, you really wanted to be careful about promising future gains.
Yeah.
And there have been NFT projects to cryptocurrencies to exchanges to so many people have gotten in trouble. I'm sure that that's what the OpenSea notice was about as well. The idea of promising future gains because then it becomes a security.
Yeah.
How do you think that changes? Because I think it drastically changed, I believe, on Friday the 17th when Donald Trump launched Trump Coin,
Yeah.
which is a security.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that you just have a lot of smart people coming in to this new administration and a lot of smart people who are coming in and really looking at things objectively. And yes, there's a lot of, I would call it shenanigans going on, particularly with meme coins, which are, you could argue, are kind of analogous to gambling a little bit. But that said, I mean, when you look at the actual laws that are in place on what makes a security, what makes a commodity, and take that into account with creating open markets that also have disclosures and protect people, which you still need to have. I just think that, as David Sachs put it, the reign of terror in crypto is over. I think he said recently at a crypto ball in DC. And it's just showing you that there's just common sense now. And really the common sense perhaps could be argued was clouded by a couple gangsters in the SEC in Gensler and some of his other people, and then of course Elizabeth Warren and some other people there. But ultimately, here's the bottom line: is who makes the laws, and it's always Congress, right? So that's why so many concerted efforts were taken to bring in the right people, to have a democracy where people vote for the right people who influence and create these laws. And it would seem that the momentum is on crypto's side to ensure that Congress can really pass something meaningful here and help advance the industry.
One of the worries I have with, I love what you've just said there, the quoting David Sachs, right? The reign of terror, this idea of Chokepoint 2.0, right? We're basically
Right.
going to make it so uncomfortable that crypto can't survive in the United States. Do you worry? This is a worry I have, so I want to ask you if it's a common worry. Do you worry that Bitcoin and crypto is becoming too politicized to the point where, in the world that we live in the United States right now, it's like we have President Bush, so it's going to the right, and this may be off on the camera, right? But we swing to the right. Then we have Obama, we swing to the left. Then we have Trump, we pendulum. Then we have Biden, we pendulum. Now we're with Trump, we pendulum. I wonder, and I wonder if this is a worry that you have to worry I have, that if the Democrats win in 2028, right, I worry that they could come in and bring back Chokepoint 3.0 and just kind of be like, well, that's something that you liked. We don't like it just because basically you liked it, right? I know that they'll have a bunch of reasons. And a lot of times when I hear politicians talk about the reasons why they don't like Bitcoin or crypto or Bitcoin mining specifically, it's a lot of FUD narratives. Not a lot of it's based in reality. And if you're actually in the space, you're just kind of rolling your eyes because you're like, dude, that was like what you said 5 years ago. That's no longer true. And we know this, right? We have so many peer reviewed studies, like, right? Like that's just, you can also see it on chain. We don't need to you can see it on chain. So I worry if you think it's going to pendulum back.
Yeah. Well, I think yes, and they say it's a lot harder to revoke laws than it is to make them, right? And I just hope that we have enough momentum to actually create some legislation that can endure and last. And that could potentially create a little bit more protection against a group or an agency that may want to reverse the clock a little bit on the progress or make things, bring back, like you mentioned, like a Chokepoint 3.0, which is, that could be certainly a reality in the future. But my hope is that the progress reaches sort of a threshold, whether that's through litigation, through legislation, through the massive benefits to the economy that the on-chain platforms and companies are going to bring. And then consumers, right? And the other thing is you never know what's really going to happen with the US dollar, right? I mean, something could happen where there's another global systemic crisis, whatever it is. And I remember saying this on your first pod, on the first time I came on your pod, is what's plan B on the financial system, So in summary, I would just say like, yeah, I do worry about it. But I think there's just so much momentum and the industry has matured to the point where it just feels like there's more consensus around this being here to stay. It feels like it's viewed less as a scam, right? ETFs are coming in. It's getting legitimized. It's getting institutionalized. We're in a world where we're approaching stablecoin adoption at a massive scale. We're in a world where we could see the stock market being tokenized, according to Larry Fink, who's bullish on that, right? The BlackRock guy. So all of these little things that add up that make you wonder, like, these are all just feathers in our cap. And anyway, the steady beat of progress around crypto as an asset and just as a technology will march on, regardless of nation state adoption, like whatever anybody thinks. It's always going to march on. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, in that sense, it feels like the internet. It's like the internet was going to happen. You could say it's not going to happen. You could hate on it. You could be like, no one's even going to adopt personal computers. So how would they run the internet? All of these things, right?
Totally.
I did a episode on Future Signal where I was talking about the 5 signals, the 5 bullish signals I'm looking out for in this particular bull run or just moving forward, specific to Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin leads. It's the first through the door. It leads, and then most of the rest of the crypto follows. And I could probably go through those, but if I go through those, it will taint your opinion, I think, a little bit because you'll be like, oh, yeah, I never thought about that, or I did think about that, and that's what I think. So what is a signal or two signals that you're looking forward, and it could be in the next 6 months, 12 months, it could be in the next 10 years, where you're like, okay, like when you see this thing happen or this news come out, you're gonna be like, yeah, okay, this is here. This is great. I knew this was going to happen, and I'm glad that this has happened. What's that flag? What's that green flag?
The green flag that would kind of indicate that we're just going to new heights, or the green
Yeah,
flag
that's
is
just like the tipping point. I'm thinking like Malcolm Gladwell type thing. Like, there was a moment with Uber adoption
yeah,
where people stopped thinking it was weird and then everyone downloaded it. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. Well, I think a huge tipping point is going to be if the United States creates a Bitcoin strategic reserve. I think that's going to be huge. And I remember reading an article from the Paradigm team, the VC, crypto VC Paradigm, and they described it like the invention of gunpowder. When gunpowder was invented, it became strategically, I would put it, unstrategic. It would become a liability if you did not adopt the technology, because you'd be at further risk, and another country could have, potentially more leverage over you with a groundbreaking technology like that. And so I tend to believe that. I tend to believe that if the United States were to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve and actually get that thing going in an official way, in a legal way, I think you would start to see a pretty substantial amount of countries that would follow suit. And in that sense, Bitcoin doesn't need it. Bitcoin, I think, could be an incredible beneficiary of that, though. And people like you and I and other people who hold Bitcoin, I think, could benefit from that immensely. That would be a huge green flag for me. The other green flag would just in terms of practicality, is just getting sensible regulation passed. More players on the field, more people who understand the rules of the game, more opportunities to bring entrepreneurs together, particularly in the United States, which is a great place to build. I would say those two things are pretty promising, but I'm very curious to hear yours now. I want to know what you think.
Oh gosh. I did this episode and I could find my notes maybe in my phone, but before I do, I want to call out a couple of things. One, I heard Saifedean talk about that. I didn't know. What was the name of the VC group? Paradigm? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Paradigm.
Yeah, I'm sure that Saifedean took it from them or they took it from Saifedean. But Saifedean was like, look, when gunpowder came out and you have your kingdom and you have your kingdom and the kingdom next door adopts it and you don't have it, what's going to happen? Yeah. He's like, that's the same thing that's going to happen for Bitcoin adoption at a nation state level. And I think it's one of the easiest ways to kind of like wrap your head around it,
Right.
And then I also wanted to call it Soft War. It's a book I still haven't read. It was a book and I'm looking, I can't see the name of the author, but it came out, it was in paperback. And then the guy who wrote it basically got a cease and desist letter for distributing it from the US government. And there are certain people in Bitcoin, maybe you have a copy, other people do. They have copies. I think it's out there somewhere on a PDF, like you could probably find it. Mm-hmm. But the whole idea there is like Bitcoin as a national security narrative. And I think that's a very interesting one moving forward in a world of extreme currency debasement, where the United States is, now has, I think, like $1.5 trillion that they just have in just debt payments annually, which is an astronomical amount of money. What are mine? Oh man, I should remember this. One of them was definitely the SBR, right? The Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. One of them was being able to open up my phone, and whether it's Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America, being able to go in and buy Bitcoin. Having financial products around Bitcoin, like so I could go and leave $500 of Bitcoin and take a loan on it and a collateral, like where they have all the wallets set up, right? Where that's like going to be done well. Those two, I think there was one about some regulation. That was one. It's crazy. I can't remember this because I made the episode about it. But I think what else? Capital gains. I think it's money. It's digital cash. I think I should be able to send you $500 in Bitcoin and not, spring a taxable event, right?
That'd be so amazing.
That just makes sense, right?
It's a great one.
And I'd have to go through. I didn't think you were going to ask me, But definitely the SBR, definitely being able to basically seeing all the TradFi banks just capitulate, because everyone in the United States, if you're listening to this and you have a smartphone, there's a non-zero chance that you probably, I feel really strong about it, you have a banking app. And the second that people can get it through their Chase, their Bank of America, their Wells Fargo, and there's some type of like a multi-sig where just like the FDIC will insure each bank account that you have up to $250,000. I think there's going to be something that will insure you up to $250,000 in Bitcoin for losses. And I think there's going to be really good multi-sig technology that comes out that's going to allow people to be able to do loans. That's definitely something I'm looking forward to. And I think one of the other things, it's a signal, and I don't know if I included that, is just the way people, especially younger people, when I say younger, I basically mean probably 50 and under, the way we're starting to think about real estate. I think that dynamic is shifting very, very quickly. And this idea of, you know, if I have $80,000 for a down payment or $80,000 and I put it in Bitcoin and I pay rent, and the rent is actually cheaper than the monthly payment, which would be for my mortgage, and I don't have to deal with taxes, and I don't have to deal with increasing premiums on insurance because of the climate crisis, and I don't have to deal with maintenance. I know a lot of Bitcoiners who have sold rental properties to buy Bitcoin. They've sold their main residence and now their family is renting just so they can take the equity and put it into Bitcoin around sub 100. I think that is going to be a massive conversation, because real estate was never supposed to be something that people were supposed to use as piggy banks. But post 1971 and getting off the gold standard, and you know, that really led us into the 2008 financial crisis, where people saw it like as a quote asset. And I tell people all the time, yeah, it's an asset, but it's an asset for the bank. If you read, you know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he's like, it's cash flow. If it takes money out of your pocket, it's a liability. If it puts money in your pocket, it's an asset. And the way real estate works today, it's misconstrued. So I think that's another signal I'm looking for. And I've had many conversations with people looking at that, because it's like you could actually rent for cheaper, take your equity, get a really good position in Bitcoin. And if you got kids, that's great. You know, if you have kids, and with like the advances in medicine, I don't know. I think any kid who is fortunate with life is going to live to 100. And 2140 is the last mined Bitcoin. And even by 2040, mid 2040s, the block reward in Bitcoin alone is like zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. You know, so it's just kind of like, anyways, I could go on a thing, but I think real estate, the way we look at real estate, and we're going to start to see real estate more as, yeah, that's just where we live. That's not where we piggy bank our money. That people are going to see Bitcoin as a piggy bank, and that's going to be a massive shift. So, yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. Anything to respond there? I kind of just went on a tangent.
No, I love that, dude. And I guess like kind of my thought to that is just, you're so right. For so long, it's been, for the most part, people park their wealth in their real estate, in their homes. Because it's easy, it's useful, and again, just imagine a world where you have different options on how you want to do that, right? Maybe perhaps the American dream of owning a home isn't quite what it once was. And maybe there's another plan where you can say, yeah, I'm going to try this Bitcoin thing. I'm going to try something else out. So I love that. And it's the kind of thing that gets me excited about crypto kind of writ large.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say it's almost like a plan B for real estate in that sense, where you're like, because I think for a while, and the thing is, real estate is so both financially encouraged as well as culturally and societally encouraged. Financially, it's like, yeah, once you get $200,000 in equity, you can take out a $100,000 HELOC, and that's a great access to cash. It is a very trusted collateral vehicle, which is great. Like, that has helped so many people, you know? And then the other thing is, it's like, if you put the picture up with your partner and you go and buy a home, or if I'm single, and if I go and buy an apartment and I hold keys up and I put it up on social media and I do the tag, hey, I did a thing. Do you know how many people, maybe I'll just do that just so we could see, and then I'll report back. But like, I would get so much more engagement on that post than if I was like, hey, today I bought that equivalent of down payment in Bitcoin. No one would care. No one would care. And part of me believes that that's just because other people are like, oh, he's a homeowner too. I'm a homeowner. That's cool. Let me let me give him a high five. But I do think that tide is changing, and there's so many Gen Z essentially is looking at everything differently when it comes to investments. They're looking at the world differently. I mean, they're not even drinking alcohol, something that humans have been doing since forever. They're looking at that and they're like, no, that's not going to do it. So I do think things are changing. And I actually wanted to ask you, as an educator in the space,
Yeah.
I've been dying to ask you, and hopefully you'll play along here. But you have children.
Yeah.
How are you starting to talk about some of these concepts? Maybe not the specifics, right? This is Solana, right? This is a layer two. What are concepts that maybe your children are picking up on at whatever age they are? And I'm not sure how, I know they're young, but like the ideas of decentralization and the ideas of permissionless access, which isn't, it rarely exists in the world we live in, right? Most things are permissionless. I mean, I can't go into Costco without an ID, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah. I love this question. It's so important to me. I'll answer it in a few ways. Number one is just making crypto sound fun and sound like the frontier and creating some kind of bridge that they can relate to it. For example, Pudgy Penguins, right? I'm a Pudgy Penguin NFT holder. They're the Disney of crypto, or so people say, and I love them. I love the community of Pudgy Penguins. I bought mine when they were dirt cheap and never sold it and held on to it. And it gives you perks. And one of the perks is you can buy toys. They actually sell Pudgy Penguin stuffed animals. I should go get one right now. It's in my daughter's room. They sell these in Walmart or Amazon. I got mine on Amazon. And what it comes with is actually a digital certificate that's on chain, right? And so I gave my daughter this Pudgy Penguin toy, and I went through the process of scanning the certificate and showed her my screen with this cute little Pudgy Penguin, and you can like play a game and stuff. And just explaining to her that this is purely yours, like this toy, but also this experience and this certificate shows it's yours forever. No one can copy this. This is only unique to you. And if you have kids, and especially 4-year-olds, you know how much they love like feeling special and feeling like this is just mine, especially if they have siblings where they have to share all the time. So just kind of, that's kind of how I'll like plant little seeds. And then just the other thing is my partner and I actually wrote a children's book for crypto when I was at Coinbase. And I'm not sure I told you this.
no, you didn't tell me this, but I love that I
Yeah,
asked this question. I
you
Nostradamus
knew
that
it.
one, huh?
Yeah. So um, it's called Bit by Bit. And it's a story about really just about like the power of the technology and how it can help you achieve your dreams and just be innovative and think new things. And imagine using your imagination to create. And if there's any technology in the world that can help a creator build, that can help an owner own, that can help a artist earn a living and create value off of their art without any intermediaries or anything, it's blockchain, right? And yes, there's new AI tools that can drastically decrease the cost of content creation, and you probably know this is something you're probably very familiar with. But with blockchain, at the end of the day, it's going to be the key kind of rails upon which you have that provenance layer. So how do you prove that something online is real? It's all going to be blockchain. How do you attribute original ownership of something online? If only there were a cryptographic system in place to do that. And I think it's too early to kind of see that right now, but I think that's going to be a huge thing, especially as, AI generated content just continues to proliferate at a crazy scale, exponential.
Yeah, as someone in media, and I talk about this a lot on Future Signal, I've got 2 years left before any company that's going to hire me and just they're going to take my salary and they're going to give it to someone abroad and they're going to create an avatar They're going to pay so much less in salary, not have to deal with benefits, not have to deal with healthcare, and they're going to have potentially even a better product because that product doesn't get sick. That product's not worried about lighting. Just to give everyone an idea about this super big light, because if not, this there's so many things that
Doesn't make
go
a
into
difference.
content creation that I think people think it's easy, and so when AI comes along and it just solves all those issues, it's real. Bit by bit, I'm going to get that, and
Sure.
I've gosh, what 2-year-old nephew now, and I've got him 2 of the books from Shamory, which talk about Bitcoin. If you give a monster of Bitcoin and Goodnight Bitcoin, so I will add bit by bit to that. I'll probably buy a bunch of copies because all my friends have kids that were going to find this to be a great book. So I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
This is people can really see the reality here of you and I haven't really been able to kind of catch up and just kind of jam on this stuff. I actually have a note here and you just kind of teed it up, but it's like, it says, how does he think he'll reach his kids about crypto? Nice. And then the other one was, his wife is in crypto. Is she not? I remember from the first episode, you
Yeah.
were like, yeah, like she's deep with like the OG Coinbase mafia, as you called them. How is it for you guys as a couple raising children in this world where you guys are both crypto native or crypto
Mhm.
forward, as you said? Do you guys have like weird moments with other couples? Because the story in my head is you guys are like out to dinner and they're talking about, I don't know, buying index funds, and you guys are just like, oh, geez, that's rough.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, we lived in San Francisco. We grew up in California. I
Uh-huh.
think we're both creative people. And we're both people that are able to kind of look at things in a different way and perhaps a way that is completely perhaps not along the trodden path. And what I mean by that is like Lauren grew up in San Francisco, who's my partner, and she went to a variety of like highly diverse schools, just had a very diverse experience, right? And we both went to UC Santa Cruz, very diverse kind of place, different ways of thinking. And I would say like those two things contributed to it, but also just like our environments, but also just like who we are. And once we started just opening our minds to like just technology and innovation, that's when the Bitcoin crypto kind of rabbit hole kind of got a little deeper. And then the thing about it is it's like a bottomless pit. And I mean that like in a good way, because once you go down the rabbit hole, it's like your world inverts and it's like that becomes your reality down there. And people don't get it still. I mean, like people still like, okay, like cool, Bitcoin, crypto, whatever. But because she started there so early, it really gave me a time advantage, her a time advantage to kind of really deep, like actually understand it more. And I'm curious your answer on this, but no one I talk to who spends, call it 4 hours of their entire life learning about crypto, reading about it, no one goes back and says like this isn't promising. I just feel like I rarely see that. So once you go down that hole, what I'm saying is like you actually become more convicted and you become more bullish. And I'm curious if you have a similar experience.
Yeah, I do. And I think it's, first of all, amazing that you and your partner are both crypto literate, because I know in past relationships, it, sometimes it just feels like there's a massive wall because
Mhm.
I'm so in this now. I'm creating this podcast in my 5 to 9, as I say, and then my 9 to 5, I'm working full time to honestly push Bitcoin forward. From an educational standpoint, from an informational standpoint, creating media around Bitcoin mining, which is a very misunderstood niche of what the whole entire crypto kind of environment is. I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone. If you spent 10 hours of just, this could be Googling, this could be YouTubing, this could be talking to ChatGPT, this could
Mhm.
be talking to someone like me, someone like you. I don't know anyone. I think who's done the 10 hours of work or 4 hours of work, like, the quote proof of work, who's then been like, nah, you know what? I don't really get this. And one of the things that I find more and more and is that like it's very important where you decide to share this information.
Mhm.
people in the US don't understand currency debasement. And I don't expect them to understand currency debasement because the US dollar is the world reserve currency. When you talk to a Venezuelan about Bitcoin, in about 2.5 minutes, if they hadn't heard of it, even though mostly all of them have, they're like, wait, this isn't controlled by government. I can send it on a permission network. I don't have to have a bank account that's also controlled by the government. And yes, it will go up and down, but that's just tied to the market rates and not tied to a government overprinting money. Okay, yeah, I'm in. So I think it really comes down to that. It's like if I'm in Bogota, and if I really tried my absolute hardest to get people into like skiing, it just wouldn't work. There's no snow, you know? But if I knew what skiing was and I go to Vermont or I go to Vail or I go to, Jackson Hole and no one's ever done skiing before, and I'm like, here, these are skis. This is what we're going to do. Who wants to do it with me? Yeah. It would make more sense. They have the tools and they have the experience. So I think that to me is now part of my lived experience. It's like when I talk about, and I say this all the time, when I talk about crypto, specifically normally Bitcoin, I try to get people into Bitcoin first. And then if they want to go down, like you said, the bottomless pit, please go ahead. But when I talk about Bitcoin with people in the States, I always talk about body language. Yeah. Most times, and this was maybe even years ago, now things are different with the ETF, when it came out in January 10th, 2024, their body language, they would go back. Because when I say Bitcoin, they think scam. Mm-hmm. However, when I say Bitcoin down here and Colombia's peso goes up and down, peaks and valleys, they lean in. And so much of language is body language. 70% of language is nonverbal. So I those are like the things I look for. But to answer your question, no. Anyone who's done 10 hours of just Googling, reading, I think if you read any book on Bitcoin or crypto, you're probably not going back. It's a complete mind shift, and it's a different way of thinking. Totally. And I was going to actually, now on that, what's been the most fundamental piece of content or podcast other than Future Signal that you've kind of engaged with, or book that has been just like super foundational? And then, is that something that you and your partner also like went through at the same time? Because I feel like everyone has their moments of understanding where they are. And you can always learn more, which is a really cool part of the industry. But what's something for you? And I'll share mine. Mine was the Bitcoin Standard. That was like, oh my God.
Yeah, love that. You know what? Mine is really kind of a composite of information. And I would say like the top 3 for me, it all started with Reddit. And this is before I only got a crypto Twitter account, or a Twitter account back when it was Twitter in 2017.
No, you said it right. You said it. It's the only reason to be on Twitter.
But I was really on like RBTC, our Bitcoin, our Ethereum, like all these subreddits. And that's where I really started getting into it and engaging and actually posting content. And then about 2017, I got into Twitter, and that's when I like really, if you talk to any like OG or someone who just is super crypto forward, I've seen it time and time again. It's Twitter. Twitter is how you get your news. It's your learning platform. It's how you understand the industry and seek opportunities, follow the right people. It's incredible. It's an incredible tool for it. So I would say like writ large, social media has been very, if not the most influential. I would say like on a other kind of shift standpoint, like I think it was the American Institute of Economic Research, believe it or not, like this trad organization. And it was like the super old guy who put out an article, and I'm listening to like 22-year-old, 23-year-olds talk about how revolutionary the technology is. But this was like a super traditional, like old research agency, old person put it out there. And I think the foundational thing, it was talking about Bitcoin. It was just saying that the key breakthrough that people don't really understand about Bitcoin is that traditionally you're used to payment networks and currencies being separate from each other. You have Visa and the US dollar.
Got you.
You have MasterCard and the yen. You have PayPal and the euro. Bitcoin is the first time it actually combines the two together. And that's actually super hard to do with cryptography. So I think just learning about that, it was like, that's crazy. And I think that's why people also struggle to wrap their minds around it, because it's a network, it's a currency. They're the same thing. They're kind of one and the same. They're the same system rather. But it's just like something we haven't seen before. And that's where it was like it's like the galaxy brain meme where it's like this guy at the very end on the bottom is just like his mind explodes. I think that's what kind of that plus all the social media and just learning collectively through the years is and compounds over time is what kind of got me down deeper into the hole.
Yeah, YouTube has been massive.
Yeah.
I say every day, take away all my social media, just leave me YouTube because I think you can just learn so much and synthesize so much, and
Another great one.
you can hear from so many different people
Yeah.
that how else would you ever get to hear from them? And reading is one thing, but hearing someone and their voice and watching them and talking about stuff and their passion is, I think it's unbelievably powerful. I hadn't heard that. What I was saying the other day was a buddy, I think he sold some MicroStrategy. Today we're recording on February 26th, which I have to say, because by the time this comes out, the world could be different, right?
Sure it will be.
It will be. And he was saying this to me this morning that he sold some MicroStrategy. And I was like, man, I've never owned MicroStrategy. If I'm going to own anything, I'm just going to own Bitcoin at this point. When it comes to like the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? MicroStrategy is basically the Bitcoin play from TradFi. Mm-hmm. And I was like, one of the coolest things I think about Bitcoin is just like you said, well, it's a currency and a payment network. But for me, it's like a stock that you can use. Like if you have $10 million of Amazon stock and you get held up in Bogota and you realize you don't have your credit card on you and your phone dies, or your phone shouldn't die, you're going to need that to transact the Bitcoin. But like, you don't have service down here, but you have your phone and you have Lightning and you can do that offline. It's a stock that appreciates that globally people want. Mm-hmm. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's never existed. Like you can't trade stock. Like stock cannot be used to like exchange value at a store for an apple globally. And that to me is another like profound thing that Bitcoin kind of has done. You're now let's shift a little bit. You're now out of Coinbase. Mm-hmm. Well, how are you engaging daily with crypto other than hopping on great podcasts like Future Signal? How are you, where are you finding your moments? You're a Pudgy Penguin holder. Are you on X? Are you in Discord? Are you still on the Reddits? Are you watching YouTubes? What does it look like for you now with crypto, assuming, even though I think you have a new gig that's in crypto, you can share that or not share that, but like personally, outside of professionally, how are you engaging these days with crypto?
Yeah, kind of all the above. I'm kind of everywhere. I would say the big one is Twitter, and people. I had dinner the other night with an ex-colleague who is the biggest Bitcoin bull, and you and him would have a wonderful conversation, and just touching base with him and his network, right? Because when you talk to people like that who follow it so closely, you can get a really clear and crisp download on what's going on. Mm-hmm. So friends, social media. I would also argue that Farcaster is pretty incredible. So Farcaster is for those who don't know, is a decentralized social media. Think of it kind of like a X that runs on chain or leverages decentralized technology for a social media platform. All of that, I do periodically, I'll just toss on a YouTube video at random. Like the other day, I was watching a whiteboard crypto video about the EVM, just like popped up in my feed. I spent like 15 minutes learning about it.
That's like one of the nerdiest things I've heard in so long. Yeah, I'm just watching a whiteboard on the EVM. I'll be in the room in a minute. I'll be right in.
Yeah, I honestly I watch it when I go to bed, and it's just like, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Like if the EVM is like the processing chip and Ethereum is like the iPhone, like that's an interesting analogy. Just stuff like that. So yeah, kind of all of the above, but I would say Twitter and X is probably still the main thing, because you need to have something that's real time. An article posted yesterday is old news already in crypto, as you know.
working in media and Bitcoin is unbelievably relenting. I mean, there are days
Sure.
where I work till 11 p.m., days where I'm up at 6 a.m. A lot of that is because of how global it is. We have a team around the world, and it's just
Yep.
like the other thing is I don't try to chase as much as maybe I should in my position, but it's like if I get on and there's news XYZ has already come out, I'm not gonna like stress. I'm just gonna quote post. Like I'm not gonna try to come up with our own take on this. It's like no, it's already happened.
Hmm.
Somebody wrote about it. You know, if you try to compete with like CoinDesk, um, Blockworks, and some of these other ones, Bitcoin Magazine, these people are just, and there's people that just sit on Twitter and they literally post probably once every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And they're
Terminally
synthesizing stuff.
online.
Yeah.
I would also argue, just a note for those who, if you're following this or listening to this and thinking you need to be online all the time and on Twitter all the time, you don't necessarily need to. And there are consequences to that, right? It's like definitely touch grass and don't go too deep. I've actually thought about like building a Twitter digest or something, or some kind of way to text me twice a day, morning and night, what's going on with crypto Twitter. So yeah, just take it. Don't be online too much. You gotta live your life.
Yeah. It's something I'm trying to do. Like, because now that I work online, not just
Hmm.
like, I work remotely, but like because my job is tied to X and tied to YouTube and tied to
Yeah,
LinkedIn, man, I don't want to do that stuff a lot
yeah,
of the time. So,
it's hard.
um, we are coming up on an hour though, and I want to make sure I give you your time back to spend with your family. I do want to put out to everyone listening that Jon is hopefully going to come back monthly. He's a resident similar to how Andy does AI. I'm hoping Jon can do crypto and Bitcoin and other parts of the ecosystem, the EVM and NFTs, which honestly I'm just not that up on. So I'm hoping maybe you can keep me up on. Pudgy Penguins is one of the most unique projects in Web3. I think
Hmm.
between Pudgy and Doodles, those are the two that I just think the world of, and I think because they make it fun, and anything that seems fun is just going to continue to garner attention. That's kind of like what I think Apple did for a long time. I don't know if they're still doing that. They tried with the Vision Pro, that didn't work out. But Jon, I'm going to put all your contact info, probably your X and your LinkedIn in the episode description. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Listening on a podcast platform, please subscribe. Make sure you're following us wherever you are on socials at Future Signal Pod. And be sure to reach out if you have any questions, or if you have any questions for Jon, he'll be back on in March. Jon, thank you once again. Good to have you back. It's been a while. You've written a book. You've worked at Coinbase for 3.5 years. Bitcoin has gone from probably since we first talked, 30,000 to 69,000 down to 15,000 and all the way up to 108,000. So the world's moving fast. Thank you for hopping on today.
Let's go. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to some more appearances.